So I once had a student named Chris who snuck into my classroom when no one was there, and he super glued every single one of my drawers and cabinets shut. I mean, super glue! We're not talking about glue sticks or Elmers. And in the middle of class, he and all of his friends thought it was so hysterical when I pulled the handle off of the cabinet as I tried to wrench it open. And obviously, I didn't think it was very funny. Looking back, it was probably extremely funny, but not at the time. You know, Chris used to hide food around my classroom so that it would rot and smell over time, and every so often, I'd find curdled chocolate milk hidden on the bookshelf, or moldy bread behind a potted plant. I mean, this kid had it out for me, and while sometimes it was funny, it was often very disruptive. And, you know, sometimes I'd address Chris publicly, or I'd meet him in the hallway to talk about his behavior, and then we'd get back to work. And he'd always agree to do better, and I always tried, to give him the benefit of the doubt. But these corrections were temporary fixes, and his improved behavior really never lasted long. And he was slowly chipping away at my patience. And then finally I had enough. I mean, one time I returned to my classroom after being sick for a day, ready to just pick up where I left off. And I got to my desk in the morning, and on top of my papers was a note from the substitute. Now, usually these notes from the subs usually say something like, "Hey, this is what we did in class, really nice, great group of kids. Here's my phone number if you need a sub in the future." Well, this wasn't one of those notes. Instead, it said, in all capital letters, it said, "This was the worst group of students I've ever seen. Your student Chris made me cry. What the hell kind of teacher are you?" Yikes. The sub did not leave me her phone number, so I'm guessing she doesn't want to come back and have another invite to my classroom. And then after doing some digging, I found out that Chris hid a remote-controlled noisemaker that produces flatulent sounds, a fart machine, and anytime it got quiet in my room, he activated the machine. And when the substitute, who was listening to all of these noises as she's trying to be a sub, everyone would else laugh, and she became so upset that she just wrote me a really upset note. The more upset the sub became, the harder the kids would laugh, and she snapped. And this was the day that my patience for Chris finally ended. I walked him down to the front office myself, and I wrote him a detention. I told him that his lack of respect for me and his classmates would no longer be tolerated, and that he would not be welcome back in my classroom until he could apologize to me, and even to the rest of my class, and even to the substitute. Well, it turns out we all have our breaking points, and Chris had finally found mine. That afternoon during my prep period, I received a call from the front office that it was Chris's mother on the phone and that she wanted to speak with me. Well, I thought, excellent. She's probably going to apologize for the way that her son acted, just like my mother would do with me if I would have done something like that. Well, instead I heard this. "Mr. Muir, who do you think you are? Chris texted me and told me that he's not welcome back in your classroom. And for what? Because he played a silly prank? I am meeting with your boss tomorrow, and I'm moving Chris to another class because this is unacceptable." Click. I mean, I was dumbfounded. How could this person just hang up on her son's teacher? Why didn't she ask how her son was being disciplined, and maybe why? I mean, does she really believe that I hate her son and that I'm banning him from my class? Seriously? She hung up on me? I mean, I was angry. I was hot. And I felt like this encounter confirmed all of the stereotypes that modern parents carry. That they are petty, helicoptering, obstinate enablers who work against their students' teachers, and that they're just trying to mow down every obstacle that stands in the way of their children. I mean, I think this is why the term lawnmower parents has gained so much popularity. My anger was only amplified the next day when the parent demanded my principal that I apologize to her for how I treated her son, and that I'd have to do it in person. My blood was boiling that whole day as I awaited that meeting. And 20 minutes before Chris's mother arrived, my principal came into my classroom during my prep period, and he said two things that I'll never forget. One, which I loved hearing, and one which I couldn't comprehend. First, he said, "Trevor, this is bullcrap. You disciplined Chris exactly how he should have been disciplined. It's ridiculous that this parent thinks that you should have to apologize to her." Well, that made me feel a little better. But then he dropped the bomb. He said to me, "Now you need to go apologize." What? How could I seriously be expected to say sorry for doing the job that she should have been doing at her own home? I wanted to say to her, "I'm sorry for teaching your son some much needed respect." I wanted to tell her that maybe Chris's discipline issue at school has something to do with how he's disciplined at home. And maybe I wouldn't have to give him a detention if you maybe laid down the law a little bit more. My principal allowed me to air out all of my frustrations to him. But then he imparted on me some wisdom that can only be gained through years of working with parents and students. He told me that this mom really loves her son. He said she cares more about him than anyone else in the world and would do anything to make sure that he is safe and that he succeeds. He also said that this mom doesn't realize that I have the same intentions for him, and that if I can just make her realize this, if I can make her understand that I also want what's best for him, she could become an ally like no one else. Well, I hadn't really thought about it this way before. But now as a parent, looking back at this, I know he was right. As a dad of 2 kids in school, I want nothing but the best for them. And I'll do anything to make sure that they get the best. And so I met with Chris's mom. And I started out our meeting by swallowing my pride. And I apologized for anything I may have done to mishandle the situation. Instead of making a bunch of excuses, good excuses, or listing all of the events leading up to Chris's detention, I said I was sorry for the way things transpired, and that I was hoping that maybe she could help me find a way to get Chris back on track in my classroom. Well, immediately the tension drained from the room. My humility caught this mother completely off guard, and all of her anger and mistrust for me just evaporated. I could see her visibly relax her clenched muscles, as I can tell that she was preparing for a fight. But she said to me, "Thanks so much for that. Chris really does love your class, and I'm glad that you're still open to working with him." And that was the moment that my principal's wisdom was confirmed. This mother didn't think I was a bad teacher. She was worried that I was a teacher who had given up on her son. And as soon as she knew that I wasn't, that my intentions were actually the opposite, I want my students to succeed, we were able to have a great conversation. She opened up about the divorce that she was in the middle of and how Chris has really been acting out lately at home because of it. And then with tears in her eyes, she shared her own struggle that she was having at home with him. And we came up with a plan together, and she left on a positive note. And the next day, Chris came to my classroom 30 minutes before school, and he apologized to me. And he said sorry for the way that he acted all year, and he promised that he would do better. And I was shocked by his own humility, and I thanked him for the apology. And later that day, I found out that Chris was grounded for a month, and his mother made him march in and say sorry that morning. She had my back. And of course, I can think that parents can be overbearing sometimes. I've seen my fair share of helicopter and lawnmower parents, and I've seen this uptick in this behavior the last 10 years. However, I think dismissing them with a label misses out on a huge opportunity. The fact is, parents can be overbearing because they want what's best for their kids, and they don't always believe that teachers share the same sentiment. And this isn't fair for teachers, I agree. And I think media and pop culture and politicians often do way too much to sow this distrust. Teachers have enough on their plates that they shouldn't have to verbally express their devotion to their students and job to get the respect and support that they need. But I really do believe that this is at the heart of overbearing behavior. And when we can make it clear to parents that we have their kids' best interest at heart, and that in doing so, and that this is why we got into this profession in the first place, parents will begin to really do what's best for their kid, which is supporting their teachers. And supporting doesn't mean agreeing with their teachers all the time, but instead working to get on the same page, providing resources, volunteer hours, reinforcement for expectations at home, encouragement. This is what support is. And this is what happened with Chris. Since my meeting with his mom, she became my #1 advocate. Not only did she support every further discipline I had with Chris, and there were some more, but she was always the first to respond when I asked for parent volunteers. She went to bat with me with other parents. She sent encouraging emails, and we never had another negative incident again. Chris's mom became an ally. She was the opposite of the enemy. And this is an attitude, a mindset that we have to develop towards parents. When they know that we care about their kid, they will go to the ends of the earth to support us, even if that means supporting their child getting another detention for bringing in the fart machine again, which Chris did, and he got in trouble, and she had my back. So anyway, chew on this. Think about how can we help make parents become allies with us so that we get that support, so that we can help serve their students, serve their kids, and help them find success.